Good morning, Internet. Welcome back to the channel. I'm still here in Karizawa, Japan. Today's the last day. I'm going to go ahead and return the X-ADV 750 by Honda. 750 scooter type design, but with a DCT transmission, chain drive, that sort of thing. I thought I'd give you my initial impressions after riding it a lot for just under 2 weeks. And the reason I rented it is it's not available in the US, and I always said, well, you know, being a Honda guy, having had an NC and an Africa Twin now, if this was available in the US, maybe I would buy it. And is that true after all this? Let's get into it a little bit. Okay, first things first, this X-ADV compared to the NC750, I think they have really similar drivetrains. Dual clutch transmission, chain drive, 745cc motor. I would imagine they're tuned a little different. Probably not that much. I'm not going to get into detailed specs. I'm just giving you my impressions after riding it for quite a while, having ridden the NCs a lot, and give you my thoughts on would I really buy this if it was available in the States over an NC. First off, let's talk about power. Plenty of power. I mean, I was really surprised, I guess not surprised, impressed with the power. Speeds are a lot lower here in Japan, but that means actually quite a bit more passing, overtaking of cars, you know, anywhere from 30, 40 miles per hour to on the expressways, you know, passing people that are doing like 60, 65. So I've had her on the expressway, you know, 124 clicks, which is in the 70s, I think. Pretty steady. We did maybe on a closed track get her, you know, into the 130s passing people. Maybe that's closer to 90. I'm not sure. We'd have to look at the conversions, I imagine there, but it didn't feel wobbly or real rattly. You know, when you get a bike up really near its top speed, like I rode some X-Maxes and you get them up to 75, sure, they'll do it, but you know, you feel like you are really pushing the envelope. Never felt like this, always plenty of power. I was a little nervous. Paul, my brother-in-law, has a BMW R1200T, like a touring bike. I was like, boy, am I going to keep up at all? That kind of thing. Of course he's faster and has more power, all that, you know, but in real world applications riding around, we kept up just fine. You know, when he'd go to pass somebody, I'd be right there with him. We'd tuck back into traffic really well. I was really, you know, the power is excellent, 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 especially for a scooter type bike, you know, really excellent power. Handling, that was a little different, I gotta say. It took me a couple of days to get used to the scooter seating configuration, you know, with the where your feet are and no tank and nothing there kind of towards your knees or just below the knee, you know, none of that, or your thighs. There's nothing there, so it was a totally different thing. You really had to like work on locking your feet in more, that sort of thing. But responsiveness, this thing is responsive. It takes all your inputs. They're quick, but more importantly than quick is predictable. You just knew exactly what it was going to do once you kind of got used to the bike, exactly what it was going to do. Very zippy, responsive handling, especially, you know, just tons of hairpin turns here, turns of all kinds, uphill, downhill, off camber, all this stuff. It really just took all the inputs really, really well. Ride by wire, the throttle response was always predictable. So no complaints there, other than compared to an NC, you know, there were times, I would say handling wise, where I guess I probably would have preferred a traditional bike setup with the tanks, you know, something more substantial to hold into when you're really tipped into those right-hand corners. I wasn't too sure, and part of that is when I got the bike here, you can see these floorboards, you know, were scraped up, so I was always a little cautious, like you know, foot peg you'll scrape a little bit and it will bend back and up and out of the way. And Hondas have those little bolts on the end, like little wear plates almost. So I was a little more cautious, but man, I got in some deep leans. I just wasn't sure how much more there was. So, I don't know. Handling this was more responsive, but I was kind of at times missing that. One thing I will say that I was super impressed with handling wise in the twisties on those deep, right, wide curves was the rear brake on the left hand. You could really modulate if you're like, oh, I just want to lean a little more for that turn, but I'm not sure how much I got. Just a little bit of rear brake modulation, tightened up that radius a bit. That was really cool, really impressed. So maybe a slight edge on the handling here. It's a give and take, but man, that was really helpful, especially in the twisties, that rear brake on the left hand, being able to modulate that, tighten up that radius or adjust that radius in those really kind of fast, tight right turns, especially where it's a little more difficult to use your foot for me personally. So maybe slight edge over an NC for that. Notice a huge difference in responsiveness compared to the Africa Twin with that giant 21-inch tire. That it's just completely different bike. I'm not comparing it to that, but 17 front, 15 rear, and the 15 rear is sort of, I think, where she lets you down a little bit, and we'll get into that next. So, yeah, 15-inch rear, it's fine. I didn't really notice it except a couple times pulling into these traditional Japanese inns. They let us park up by the main doors, which meant you had a little, you know, like a 2-inch little bump, and a couple of times I hit something in the back. Maybe it's the rear center stand or something, or the rear shock mount is really low when you look at the ground clearance. I mean, it's pretty low, so there's not much there. And I was thinking, oh, inverted show of forks, you know, it's got this adventure, it's the whole deal, you know. I thought, oh man, it's going to be great, you know, way more travel or something than the NC. And I don't know what the travel specs are, but riding it, no, I don't think so. I bumped something a couple times. Maybe it was only the center stand, I don't really know. And on road, a couple of these backcountry roads are, you know, a lot of patches, heavily patched or cracked or bubbling, tarmac, and man, it felt a little harsh, I'm not gonna lie. It was, you could feel all that pretty intensely. And we unintentionally ended up on what I consider a fire road, a gravel, loose shake gravel road coming down a mountain, kind of a steep descent, weaving away with a lot of rain snakes, you know, where the rain makes little channels in the road and they're unpredictable, and this way, that way, you got to switch over to the other tire track, that sort of stuff. In that situation, going downhill, this ADV has a gravel mode button. Yeah, very useful. It really tempered the characteristics well on the downhill descent. So that was pretty useful, I think. And I felt it handled really well. Going downhill, I was impressed. I thought maybe she'd be a little more skittish. Didn't really have a lot of sliding or unpredictable movement from the bike at all. It was really slow. Like I say, my brother-in-law's bike is a touring bike, so our pace was gentle, you know, and rightfully so. It was kind of a steep, tight turns, weaving our way down a mountain on this little fire road. But she handled really well, and that gravel mode really made a difference, I felt. Now, another kind of side of that is it's really difficult to stand. If I put my feet all the way back here, I could kind of stand up, but it was really far forward and I wouldn't want to do it off-road. And I miss doing it to cool off and stretch my legs. They do make, I think, adventure pegs, which I think go here, which you can, then they say stand up, but this one doesn't have it. And I think if I had been going uphill on that road, it would have been a completely different story. I would not have liked climbing that road at that grade with this bike as much as an NC for sure. So that definitely the advantage to the NC. We'll go over a couple other differences. Storage. Again, this is kind of the cockpit. Seat, fuel. Open the seat. It does have, like all scooters, the under-seat storage, but given the engine size, it's relatively small. I don't know the dimensions per se, but I think it's probably about the same as the NC. And for me, on the practical side, of course, demounting the bike on the left, I would stow, same thing as when I had the NC, GoPro batteries, liner, extra gloves, water, stuff like that in there. When we'd stop to get a drink or whatever, change GoPro batteries, I found a little inconvenient to being tall. I had to like duck down and kind of reach in there, or reach around, where the NC's kind of up high and more open. So I think they're about the same size, just looking at them. And I think the NC gets the edge, a little more convenient and useful in the location where it is, you know, where the gas tank would be. But that's kind of a minor thing. I did really appreciate the gravel mode. The display is super easy to use. Fuel economy, I think, is probably about the same. I averaged 28 kilometers per liter, which is about 66 miles per gallon, which is probably right, exactly what I would expect given the slower speeds. I'd expect the same out of an NC, honestly. Adjustable windscreen, it was easy to use. Pull it out, lift it up, pull it out, lower it down. Real easy to use. That circular dial. Can't really do it while you're riding, but it's easy to use, easy enough to mess with. All in all, great bike. Oh, brakes. Dual front brakes, dual disc on the front, and the tubeless spoked wheels. Very helpful if you were to get a flat out here, just to be able to plug it versus a tube having to take it off. Good bike, solid. If I came back and did the same exact ride, what would I get? If it was available in the States, what would I buy? I gotta say probably the NC, just a little more familiar. I think the storage options a little more convenient and useful for me. The rear tire, I think, makes a difference on certain obstacles. Really bugged me bumping things just a couple inches, you know, with that rear tire. I don't know, maybe it's just the position of the center stand, but probably would slightly lean towards the NC. All things being equal, just being 100% honest. I wanted to love this a lot more than I did. I don't think it really stacked up on the off-road prowess with the shocks. You expect more with the inverted Showa forks. I just didn't feel like it kind of delivered in that super bumpy or off-road environment. Other than gravel mode was a godsend on that descent. But I certainly would feel more comfortable on the NC on an ascent up that same mountain on that dirt road. Well, those are my thoughts. What do you think? Did I miss anything? Probably. I'm just doing this on the fly. We're getting ready to head back. Loved it. I'm not disappointed one bit. I just maybe a slight edge to an NC if I were to do it again, or if they were both available in the States and I was looking similar price ranges, probably lean towards the NC, just being honest. Okay, those are my thoughts. We'll check in later. Thanks again.